Hi, welcome to Visual Studio Toolbox. This is a live show today, and my guest is Sam Basu. I'm your host, Robert Green. Sam, how you doing?
I'm good. I am good. Before we start, though, Robert, are we live?
We are
Just
live.
checking.
Yes, we are.
Um, where are we live? Just making sure. This is going to be Visual Studio channel because I still think the last show is on. Let me check. If you think we are good, then we are
I
good. Let me
think we're
just
good.
check.
It's also being recorded, so
Uh,
more people watch after the fact than live. So
okay.
I think we're good.
All right.
All right. Today we are going to talk about the state of mobile development. So this is kind of a show that Sam and I like to do on a regular basis, where Sam comes on and opines about all the myriad
I'm an old man.
choices. Not only old people opine. If you have an opinion, you can opine.
That's true. Well, I mean, thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in these days. If you are not aiming for your mobile audiences, then you're missing out on a big chunk of your user base. But
Mhm.
it's complicated. I think if I can just wrap up the whole show, the state of mobile development is complicated, and that's it.
But at the
So
same time, there's never been a better time to be a mobile
that's true.
developer than now.
That's true. There
Because
are lots of frameworks, lots of tools, lots of solutions for us to build. It doesn't always need to be an app, but how are you reaching those mobile form factors is where our efforts should be. And thankfully, there are lots of popular tools and frameworks that help you share code because oftentimes you're not just doing one thing. You have a web app, you have a desktop app, there are other things that you have investments in, so it's all about how you bring those things together.
right. Okay. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's get started. State of mobile dev. Robert already introduced me. I'm Sam. I am a dev advocate, and that is my social handle on most places. If you need to get hold of me, ping me. A lot of the source code here and there, the demos that we will talk about, they're all up on GitHub, so you know where to reach me. So, building for mobile. How do we reach our users? We often forget the supercomputer that we have in our pockets every day. It can do a lot, but it depends on how you enable your users to utilize the apps and the features that you're trying to build. So, how do you reach for mobile? This is my 2-minute spiel on most things mobile. I'm sure I'll be missing some, but broadly, I mean, and I say 2024, we are not quite there yet, but it's almost holiday time here, and you have a lot of choices. But at the end of the day, if you start now, you're likely not shipping until 2024. So pick your stack, build your own thing. It all depends on what you want to do, what you want to maintain going forward. So if you want to go straight up, native apps, by all means, right, for iOS, Android, and Windows. But it's expensive. It's 3 different code bases towards the same app. A lot of folks who do web stuff, keep doing your web things. There are lots and lots of frameworks that help you make that web app a really good citizen on mobile form factors. You could do, mobile web, which is where it starts behaving a little better on mobile devices. You can do go all in with progressive web apps where it's a really good citizen with push notifications, service workers running in the background. But with the same technologies nowadays, you can also build native apps that are cross-platform, with JavaScript, with .NET. So again, choose what works for you. The bottom stack here is mostly where Robert and me live. That's our .NET. That's our cross-compiled thing. And even within that, there are quite a few offerings. If you want to stay in the .NET realm and Visual Studio and all that, there are plenty of ways to reach the mobile platforms these days. So a lot of options here, and Robert, feel free to chime in and
Yep,
ask your questions as we go
I
along.
will.
This is an open conversation. We are just trying to not boil the ocean, but just look at all the options, and then I'll try to wrap up the slides fairly quickly so we can maybe jump into some code.
Yep.
But as we sit on .NET, it's modern. It's very popular. It's open sourced. It's a very welcoming place to be. You can target just about every platform. We are just talking about the sliver that's mobile. And the tools are great, both on Windows or Mac or Linux. Ecosystems are great, NuGet packages and frameworks and tools and libraries. It is a very productive and unified platform to be on. So if you start with .NET and see how things evolved, this is kind of where we started. This was called Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android back in the days. I started with Mono. We started writing some shared C#, and then we said, let's write the heads, separately for iOS, Android, and Windows. And this was a good start. You can actually still do this. It's just called .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. Good first step, but you do need to know about how to write apps in iOS or Android. So again, maybe just a slightly higher barrier to climb over. Then comes Xamarin Forms, maybe 2013-14 timeframe, and it's had a good run over the last 6-7 years. This was where we started writing shared UI, abstracted UI, because these are 3 very different platforms. But you write your visual tree, your UI in C# or in XAML, and they turn around and render native UI on iOS or Android. So you need to know less about iOS or Android.
This right here is when writing mobile apps became very doable for people like us, because we'd been doing XAML for quite some time. And I got to be honest, I'm not learning Objective-C in order to just write mobile apps for myself. If I was making a career out of it, yes, I would have dove into the deep end and learned it. But just to be able to write apps for myself, or small apps for the company, I'm not learning Objective-C, but I could take my XAML skills, learn a little bit of new XAML, and build apps that ran on Apple devices, on Android devices, on Windows. And at this point, and I'll do it all from inside Visual Studio, exact same C#. And at that point, it went from being, I can't do this, to, oh, I can do this.
It became very accessible. Yeah,
that was amazing.
And chat room is talking about how old I am. Yeah, you've seen a lot of things evolve as we go along. But again, like Robert said, it's a good time. We have seen platforms mature, tooling mature. So it's a good time. Now this is still the reality. There are a lot of folks who are maintaining apps written with Xamarin Forms in stores or also enterprise apps. But the reality is, if you start building complex apps, your code base starts getting a little out of hand, out of control. You have dependencies all over. You're building for each platform. Resources are a little harder to share, and it's only iOS or Android. So things can be better, which is exactly the promise of what was next, and that's .NET MAUI. This is multi-platform app UI. The P is silent because MPAUI doesn't sound very well as good as MAUI. So these are some combined slides here, but you may have seen some of this. But these are some of my favorite benefits. Because you are running on a modern .NET 6. It's where we started, 7, and it's been 8, and it's going to be 9. So we are sitting on a pretty solid foundation. But in addition to iOS or Android, now we are strapping on desktop, right? Which is the big thing to take on, because formal, complex enterprise desktop apps are complex, and they have some very specific needs with keyboard and mouse. So thankfully, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are reaching Windows through WinUI, which is the latest Windows stack. We are reaching Mac desktop, Mac OS, through Mac Catalyst, which is Apple's way of running your iOS apps on broader, bigger form factors. So with
the topic of MAUI, let me just interject for a second. We just released on Visual Studio Toolbox an 18-part mini-series on building apps with XAML and .NET MAUI, just released last week with our good friend Paul Sheriff running the show, Leslie and I hosting. So it basically shows you how to learn XAML and start building apps in .NET MAUI. So if you're relatively new to XAML, or you're new to the XAML that MAUI uses, highly encourage you to pop over to that. That's the Learn link. There's also a YouTube link that I'll put up in a second.
There are just honestly so many resources now for folks to run with this. Docs are great, and there are lots and lots of videos. There are entire workshops, so people can get started. So there's a lot of help. With Maui, though, what I really like here is how we are truly leveraging a single shared solution. So it's a single project. Your dependencies are in one place. If you have anything like uh, app icons, splash screens, styles, images, all of those things are actually shared now. I mean, it's not a silver bullet for all the things, but it'll try its best. So if you give it a SVG, it's going to try to cater it for iOS or Android the best it can. So it really gets you quite a bit towards truly sharing everything that you have. There's a new UI architecture, integration with other web things is pretty nice. So a lot of good things.
So there it is in the
Yeah.
show notes, both on
In the
YouTube
chat.
and Learn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's Maui, but we'll be amiss if we don't mention some of the other things as well, because these worlds are now kind of coming together. I know, Robert, we promised we'll do a whole other show on just desktop. That's really going to show my age. Yeah, I did some Silverlight back in the days. Yeah, nothing wrong. But
You're only as old as you act, Sam. That's my
yeah,
motto.
it's our combined failures that make us old. But if you are doing desktop apps, again, look at the choices. This can be confusing, but it can also be liberating, right? Because you have so many ways of reaching just Windows. The top four are straight up Windows if you want to do, just Windows. WinUI, like I said, is the latest one. I always like saying, while we're talking about mobile, I mentioned desktop because these worlds are kind of coming together. You can have a single code base that powers desktop apps and mobile apps. So don't let people tell you that, Windows desktop things like WinForms and WPF are dead. They're fine. They're running on .NET 8 today, and they'll run on .NET 9. So 15, 20-year-old things running great.
Yeah,
But
not to mention MFC, Win32.
yeah, they're good too.
Exactly.
Yep.
I
You can
think we're
put
kind
those.
of sticking, well, I would say we're kind of sticking to the C-sharpish angle here. So
Yeah. But I mean, if you want, I mean, those apps are also welcome on the stores. A lot of folks do web stuff, and again, have at it. If you want to do progressive web apps, if you want to do Electron, if you want to do React, all of those things are welcome on Windows Desktop because everybody has figured out a way to put it in a shell and make it work on desktop. And there are other things like Uno Platform and Avalonia, which are also great for desktop and mobile as well. Because, like you mentioned, Robert, like XAML, there's no one team, one product that's owned it. So there are a few dialects of XAML. So if all you have done is WPF XAML, then Avalonia is going to feel very friendly to you. If all you have done is WinUI or UWP XAML, then Uno Platform is going to feel very friendly. To me, again, it's XAML. You learn once, you can do everything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you know one flavor of XAML, you can easily figure out all the rest.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the last two are essentially enabled by .NET MAUI. That's through WinUI straight up if you want to do a native app. And then Blazor is obviously popular for the web folks. We'll talk about this more, but we are inviting all of the Blazor devs into native land. And it doesn't need to be just Blazor. It actually works with Angular or React or Vue as well. So however you want to build your web apps, modern day Spa type web apps, it's all welcome on desktop and mobile. Mac and Linux, similar stories. You can go straight up, native with AppKit and Xcode, but again, you have to learn it all just for Mac. Instead, if you do cross-platform, you will get to reach, much more, many more platforms. Again, the last two are essentially enabled by .NET MAUI. So lots of choices with desktop and mobile. Web, our beloved web, as much as Robert and me try pretending that native app is all there is to it, web is where most people are. It's ubiquitous, so I get it. And again, if you're doing ASP.NET, you are in a very good place. I mean, it's modern, it's cross-platform, it's modular. It is super, super fast. Latest ASP.NET stack, if you look at it, if you just want to do web API, it is faster than almost anything else. However, if you're doing like web apps, which are serving up customers, then you start realizing that a lot of it is maybe doing server side. Maybe you want to do more on the client side. Your browsers are extremely popular and powerful these days. So that's where you'll start leaning more on the client side. There are a whole lot of folks who have just done JavaScript, who have just done HTML, CSS, and that's how you build modern SPA apps. And those folks are welcome too, because now we are kind of living in the same boat. So if you have done any web stuff and you want to bring that to mobile, This is nothing new. So we have had lots of ways of bringing that to mobile. We kind of started from the Cordova days, early like 2010s when iPhones were new. We started, packaging up your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, putting it in the store, and it worked. But it's slower than it probably could have. But it's still option for line of business apps. There are lots of frameworks here.
Cordova's still around.
It's still around, yeah.
Okay.
If you wanted to. Ionic and other frameworks, write beautifully on it. They build on it. So lots of help if you want to do straight up, web stuff. And then PWAs are, they're a big hit, obviously, because you're not taking a dependency on anything else. It's a straight up web app. You're just running it inside of the shell of a browser without the Chrome. And you get to bundle it and put it in the store if you wanted to, or it can just be a web app. In that case, you are using the web as a distribution medium. It's reliable. It's got offline caching if done right. It's engaging. It's immersive. It can have notifications. So it's a legit solution. Where I hesitate is there are certain things you will run up against that you are not really supposed to be doing. So, for example, if you need deep integration into the camera or the geolocation, I mean, there are plugins for some of that, but it's not a native app. So you're going to start, seeing those edges quickly sometimes. But again, lots of help with PWAs. There's a community-driven project called PWA Builder that Microsoft started. Now everybody helps maintain it. It's great. You give it any website and it's going to start telling you, hey, you're missing a manifest file. You don't have service workers. So you start making your web app slowly behave better with icons. People can pin your app to their home screen. There's Lighthouse from Chrome, and pretty much any SPA application you can think of, you can start making it a PWA. So probably the lowest hanging fruit to bring things to mobile. But you just have to understand where some of the limitations might be.
Okay.
Electron. I mentioned this because it's very popular for desktop, but you don't want to do this for mobile. It is a little bit heavy-handed, but it is essentially it's a Node.js runtime that you're bootstrapping, and then you have deep OS integrations. But again, like I said, this works very well for desktop. In fact, lots of popular desktop apps we see are essentially Electron apps, but you don't want to do this for mobile because it's just not meant for mobile. It's a Node.js app. But if you wanted to do again web stuff, I'm just going to mention a few other things which are probably not in the .NET space, but you could. NativeScript will take your JavaScript and turn around and render native apps on iOS or Android. React Native will take all of your React code and your JSX and your HTML and CSS and render native UI through plugins. Flutter.
So hold on 1 second. I think it's a good one. Jules Snibble. Basically, what's wrong with Electron on mobile?
Okay.
Briefly.
Electron needs two things. One is, let's go back to the Electron slide. Where was that? So it needs two things. One is a Node.js runtime, which it's a little bit of just a hello world package is a few megabytes to start off, and then it ships with Chromium engine in it. So you essentially have a consistent rendering platform, but just by nature of it needing Node.js to bootstrap itself, it's just not very suitable for mobile. So most people do it for desktop. In fact, VS Code and things like Slack or Figma are essentially Electron apps, and they run just fine on desktop. It's just not something you want to do for mobile.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, if you do it right on desktop, it works great. It's just going to be a little bit heavy-handed on mobile. So on mobile, you are looking to do some of these other cross-platform things. If you want to stay to the true to the web side of things, you could do NativeScript. You could do React Native. You could also do Flutter if you're okay with Dart, which is a different object-oriented language. But this will do mobile and desktop as well.
Yeah, but that's not .NET, so let's move on.
No.
We move on.
We move on, but there's also
Pay no
WebAssembly.
attention to that previous slide.
I mean, it's all options, So we are from the Microsoft ecosystem, so we like our side of the family. There is also WebAssembly, although it doesn't actually play into what we are talking about with Blazor and .NET MAUI. It's an option. Again, it'll help you write almost like a PWA type app that can be, compiled and run on your mobile device. But again, you're using the web as a distribution medium. So I think the Blazor and the Maui side of the story is a better fit for mobile.
Okay.
And speaking of Blazor, we actually had Steve Sanderson and some of those folks up before us, but Blazor is big, and it's understandable why it's so exciting for .NET devs, because this, like, remember we talked about ASP.NET, that was all server-side until Blazor comes along, I think 2017-ish timeframe. Prior to this, we were not running C#, and we kind of forget those old days because Blazor is just so everywhere now. But this is the way to leverage WebAssembly if you want to run it completely client-side, or you can still do server-side with a little SignalR bridge maintaining a shadow DOM. But Blazor, as much as we talk about it, it's all for web apps. But Blazor is actually very suitable if you want to take it outside of the web and make it run on desktop or on mobile. So PWAs, absolutely. There is, in fact, one checkbox for you to make a Blazor app into a PWA, and then it starts working on mobile and desktop. Blazor can be put inside of an Electron shell, and that works fine as well. But then the .NET Maui story is really the best one, because so compared to like what Fullschnabel was asking in the chat room, .NET Maui takes a very different approach. With Electron, you're responsible for maintaining that browser because you're shipping it with your app. So security fixes and other things get to be a little bit, frequent. .NET Maui says most users have a browser, so don't bother with it. We're just going to give you a runtime and a UI view that is the modern browser. We're going to borrow it from whichever platform you're running it on, and now you're free to render whatever web things you want on that browser. The benefit of running Blazor on that browser is any code that you execute within Blazor, it can run on .NET, which is already a part of the application. So it is a native app, and even the code that Blazor is running on the metal. So performance is really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah, so Blazor Hybrid is what we like calling it when Blazor works with .NET Maui. And as we'll see, this isn't just for Blazor. Other things are welcome too, but the Blazor story is just so much better because Blazor and .NET Maui, they have the exact same runtime. That is .NET 6 or .NET 7, .NET 8. So the code sharing story is just really good.
Right.
All right. How much time do we have? We are about 24 minutes. How about we take 5 more minutes here with the pretty slides, because I want to talk about some of the pain points.
Slides.
So mobile is difficult because it takes people a minute to use your app and uninstall because they're bored. It wasn't engaging enough, or PWA took too long. So I like saying that your journey begins once you've shipped your app, because then you have to think about all the other things. And also, like, even while you're building your app, it's good to know all of the tools, because cross-platform development just by nature is complex. And the moment you bring in iOS and Android and different SDKs, different bands in how they, the updates get pushed out, it is just a complicated setup. So developers need to know all of the tools that are out there at their disposal to make this easier. So as you're building your apps, where do you deploy them? How do you deploy them? If you're on a Mac and if you're targeting iOS, well, it's simple. You already have Xcode. You have all of the simulators, iOS, all types of iPhones, all types of, iPads. This is a question, Robert, we get every single time we talk about mobile is, can I build for iOS from Windows?
Yep.
And the answer is yes and no. The yes is because tooling is great. You can actually deploy very easily to devices as well as simulators. There's a Windows simulator where you can stay in Windows, but you do need a Mac somewhere, especially if you're doing a .NET Maui app. It is a native app, so you need to be building it with Xcode. And Apple's restriction is it needs to be licensed to the same person that has the Apple Store account. So no one can get you around that. However, you don't need a physical Mac. So there are cloud services that will where you're paying for the Mac and you're just getting built out, and then you can upload to the stores. You can also deploy directly to devices, but that is so much easier when it comes to Android than it is with iOS, because again, you now need an Apple developer account, you need a certificate, you need a provisioning profile before you can sideload your app. But again, it's not difficult once you know all of the pieces.
So like that slide covers this question that we got earlier from Jay.
Yeah. So So the tool is, if you have a Mac that is connected to Visual Studio, Visual Studio will do a handshake and it will go to the Mac and do the build and come back. And you can look at the iOS simulator either on your Mac side, or you can look at it from Windows. But otherwise, I mean, you do need a Mac to go do the build, essentially. So if you're running it in a virtual environment, you just need to pair it once. So Visual Studio knows a Mac to hit, and then you have your simulators.
Okay.
Reaching iOS from Windows. Again, you don't have to even look at your Mac if you don't want to. Macs don't have touch, but Windows apps do. So you can pair your Mac to Windows once, and then Visual Studio knows how to go do the build. And when you come back, actually, there is an iOS simulator, which shows the iOS simulator that's running on your Mac, just on your Windows machine. So you can actually pinch and zoom. So you don't have to look at your Mac. It can be completely headless if you want. So, and again, if you have an Apple Store account, and if you have an iPad or an iPhone, you can actually side load your app directly from inside of Visual Studio on Windows. So
Right.
you don't absolutely have to have a Mac, but if you are building and if you're testing on a variety of devices, it might be beneficial to have a Mac of some type, or actually, pay for it in the cloud. Android, our beloved Android, has has a lot of options, a lot of simulators, a lot of emulators, and some of them are a little heavy, some of them are a little slow, but things have come a long way. Everything is just hypervisor. Everything is virtualized. So it used to be like you have to go and get some coffee, talk to your neighbors before the Android simulator comes up. It's not that anymore. It's fairly quick. So again, get what you need for the Android SDKs and up and
And
running.
if you have Windows 11, you can use the Windows subsystem for
That's
Android,
true.
which
That's
is
true.
really fast and powerful. And that would be the preferred way to go over these emulators, which
Yeah.
do take time to build and are not as zippy, if you will.
Yeah, because every one of them is essentially a VM, but you already have that in the Windows subsystem. Yeah. So get the things that you need, and when I talk about some of these tooling, Visual Studio will get you all of the things, or you can just, if you want to be more on the command line things and you're building your own stack by hand, you can go and get those emulators and simulators,
Interesting
one by
question
one.
from Fuel. Is the Android subsystem available?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know, actually, and this is a legit question because there are certain countries, certain geographies where it was not on. I am not sure, fortunately,
Okay.
to be honest. Yeah, but we can find out for you. All right. Mobile apps don't live in a silo. It's inconceivable where all your app is in one place and that's it. You are not going to have the continuity of experience. So, like, people like to start doing something on one device and then move to the other device, right? So you need to have things everywhere. So, which is where mobile backends are really popular. There's a lot of options here. Of course, you can go to Azure, and it's just a huge infrastructure of everything you can think of. It can host your data, it can host your apps, whatever you need. And there are so many services that I actually use when I'm using or building mobile apps that kind of add a little bit of personalization, a little bit of extra touch to your app. So I've always used cognitive services, which is kind of ML .NET style, where you have REST APIs and you're adding a little bit of intelligence into your app. Works for any number of languages and any number of things. Really, your app can start being intelligent. But that's kind of step one, and everything is AI. Of course, if you want to bring in any type of integration with any of the OpenAI style monsters that do everything under the sun, you can bring in ChatGPT. Azure OpenAI service is also up if you want to bring in some intelligence in your apps through AI. Maybe leverage your own models or leverage somebody else's model. It's all doable. It's all over REST, so it's all very friendly to mobile apps. If you want to have your data elsewhere, that's fine too. AWS has a lot of offerings. If you want to have your data under your desk, that's fine too, as long as it's accessible to everyone. Developer utilities. These are my everyday tools when I'm building a mobile app, because it's complicated. It's a lot of different things. So I always mention a few things that I always use. This is Fiddler. This is dev tools are good in your browser when you're building a web app, but when your mobile app is making a RESTful call or doing WebSockets, you need visibility. So that's where a real network proxy kind of helps me see exactly what calls are going out and what's coming back in. So this is great for network. Postman is also great for APIs. If you are consuming APIs, if you want to fake something, then these are all great tools. Often, when you're building mobile apps, you want to show off your proof of concept to your customers, or maybe you're on a stage and you are showing off your phone with your app running on a bigger screen. So how do you do that? Again, lots of choices here. These are some of my favorite ones. So that's what I'm mentioning here. Reflector. This is wireless screen mirroring. Works great on iOS or Android. So really, really handy tool. There's also one called Visor. This I think is wired, but again, it works very reliably once you have it wired up, both for iOS and Android. Then there is the whole idea of CI/CD and how do I push my apps to the app stores, and then how do I have telemetry over how the users are actually using your apps, and are there crashes that are not being reported? Because what you don't want is a bad review in the app store. You would much rather have a crash report and you can respond to the user. So again, lots and lots of options here. I prefer using Azure DevOps or GitHub nowadays, because you have all of your pipelines. You have a nice system to set up your own CI/CD pipeline, so you can do incremental builds. In the .NET space, we have had Visual Studio App Center. Not a whole lot has happened in this one of late, but again, it's for every type of app as well.
So last week we did we're on the topic of DevOps. Last week we did a couple live shows with Josh Johanning from GitHub. We did GitHub Actions on Monday, and then a week ago, Tuesday, we did Azure Pipelines with Azure DevOps. And then next Tuesday, Lance McCarthy is coming on to show us DevOps for Maui apps, which I'm really excited about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know Lance. I just happen to have worked with him over 15 years. He's a really smart individual.
Yeah. That's DevOps for Maui apps next Tuesday.
Awesome.
And then we're taking a break for the end of the year.
Yes, as we should. It's the holidays. So this is kind of taking it all in, taking sense of all that's on offer if you want to build mobile apps, so you can maybe think ahead and plan for the year that's coming up. Now, there are some other options that I'll be, amiss if I don't mention. There is Bitrise that, many mobile devs use. There is, Firebase, again, comparable services that are cloud services. There's a lot of help on the UI front. I am obviously biased, but don't reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of help. We make a lot of .NET UI for web, desktop, and mobile, particularly for mobile, lots of stuff. But so do other frameworks. So go get the UI that you need for your app. And there is also, lots of JavaScript. There are new JavaScript frameworks every day, but these are the ones that will give you that support and that comfort, documentation-wise, and somebody who stands by you. So that's it. That's a lot of things, but that's in a nutshell. So the state of mobile dev is complicated, but at the same time, it's a really good time to have so much of choice. So how about we look at some stuff here?
Let's do it.
All right, so let's push aside our PowerPoint and let's go to code. Just so you know, on the .NET side, I will be running on the latest .NET. So if I do a .NET version, you can see I'm running on .NET 8, which is the production version as of November of 2023. You can actually have .NET, what's the thing here, side by side. So I do have 6 and 7. So these are all .NETs that you can have side by side. You can bundle in .NET with your apps as well. In fact, like mobile apps, they will bundle everything that you need anyways. So you can, .NET is very flexible. So if I do a .NET new, if I'm starting up my, new application, then I have a whole set of choices, which are, hard to read with a little zoomed in. But these are the same choices that you get. These are templates, same choices that you get when you're using an IDE or Visual Studio. I think Robert and me did a show on the flexibility of .NET a while back, where we talked about VS Code versus Visual Studio, containers, AI. It's all in together. It's a good place to be. Yeah. So these are all the same templates. If I open a Visual Studio Code here, and if I do a Control-Shift-P to go into my command panel, you see the .NET new project. these are the same ones that show up. Like you see the .NET MAUI app, you see the MAUI Blazor hybrid, you see ASP.NET, you see Blazor. So these are all of my .NET apps. And I don't have enough ones here that you can have templates for Azure and so on. Everything is workload driven, so you can get what you need.
Right.
So yeah, that's how you get started. So let me quit my calendar or my email, which I don't need right now. But how do you get started? So let's actually go ahead and create a new MAUI app here, just hello world, just to showcase what that experience looks like. So we'll begin with desktop. We'll call it MAUI app 1. That's fine. So just to kind of showcase, if somebody has not seen this, this is Visual Studio Code, and you will get the exact same experience if you do Visual Studio on Windows. Let's collapse a few things here. It's saying, hey, your Android SDK is a little out of date. That's fine. You can see terminal and everything else is right down here. So you actually do get a Solution Explorer, kind of similar to what you get in Visual Studio right inside of VS Code here. So your app looks exactly what you'd look like.
If you have the dev kit extension, of course.
Right. So if you look at my extensions here, I got some ones that I highly recommend, and that is, of course, the C# dev kit, the C#, the .NET MAUI dev kit. I got some extra ones for the Telerik extensions that I use. Material icon theme, I highly recommend this. Makes your files look nicer. So get the things that you need. But once you start up a mobile app that's MAUI, these are some of the immediate benefits that you get. So first up, compared to Xamarin Forms, you don't have 6 different projects inside of a single solution. It's one shared project. So everything else is a resource. So your app icons, your fonts, your images, splash screen styles, they all live under one umbrella, and then they're shared across multiple resources. Now, if you wanted something that you only want for iOS and not for anything else, you do have those platform folders: iOS, Android, Mac Catalyst, Windows, Tizen. That's still okay, even though it's not really mobile, but maybe it is, because like Samsung's their smartwatch, the Gear Watch runs Tizen, so you can reach Tizen with .NET MAUI. So if you want something that's app specific or platform specific, you go put that in the platform folder.
If you take your TV and you dismount it from the living room and remount it in the bedroom, that's not mobile?
No, it is mobile, but you can also put your MAUI apps on your fridge. There are certain refrigerators which have a screen that runs Tizen. So yeah. Oh, looks like Mr. Fritz is rating us. Hello, Raiders. Hello. I'm not sure what Fritz was talking about, but welcome. Here is Robert and Sam, 2 old men just complaining about too many options that we have for building mobile apps.
Nope, not me.
All right, so you get started here, and you see how simple the getting started experience is. We are now doing the .NET generic build host. We wire up our dependencies, so DI is welcome, and off you go. So this is kind of where the first app view is, and it is a little bit of XAML here. We are just laying out some images and some labels and styles and buttons. If you don't want to see this XAML, if you don't want to write XAML, that's fine. You don't have to. But that's kind of the default. You can actually write all of this visual tree in a simple C# file as well. So you do have some choices. And down here, you'll see where my app runs. I can change where it is, select the target device. So, Mac is probably going to be quick to run, but I can also do, let's just say, an iPad or an iPhone. Let's see, iPhone 15. That's fine. Running 7, and then I can just run it. So let's just do that just for the kicks. So terminal is right here. This is essentially doing a .NET build with a target framework of iOS. You can target an Android, you can target Windows or Mac. So it's a fresh new app. So it takes a while to build it for the first time, and then off and running it goes.
You can build it for Windows, but you can't run. There's no Windows emulator for Mac yet.
No, that'll be Hackintosh, and that'll be bad. So no, but it's the same exact project. So you and me can be working on the same MAUI app. You just open up the project in Windows and Visual Studio, and you get to run it in Windows. So this is the default.
That was live, right?
Yeah, no, it's all live. So all my failures are live.
Really fast. That's a lot faster than my Mac. What Mac do you have?
This is an M2 Max, so it's got some, some
Okay.
juice to it, but still, it's in just this step you see like how much it did. Like it had to do
Yeah.
the compilation, do the AOT, and AOT is a whole other thing. What is compiled, what is pre-compiled. So it's very fast, and this is my default experience. And up and running I go. I can
Wow.
have the exact
I
same
have about a
experience.
5-year-old MacBook Pro, and it's not that fast.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a it's a fine machine, but man, I'm
right.
jealous.
So that's your, hello world experience, and it's nice how everything is truly, shared. Yeah, it doesn't need to be an AOT for the simulator. Yes, absolutely. So this is, I'm running it in debug mode. So what you see here is really the slowest option here. It's not doing AOT. It's not doing any, release mode configuration. This is just, debug. So it's, still,
Linda
it's
wants
pretty
to
quick.
clarify that Hackintosh is PC running Mac, and Hacking
That's
Downs is the
true.
Mac
That's
running
true.
Windows.
That's true. Yes, I miscoded.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I miscoded. So I actually do have Parallels running as a VM. So I run Windows very comfortably on my Mac. It's not Hackintosh, but it works just fine. But it's a VM that it's running Windows
Oh,
separately.
I just invented the second one, so that's not real.
These are my good friends who like to make fun of me because they see me fail all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the default
And while we're
experience.
digressing on the subject of where
Oh,
Windows
there you
substitute
go.
for Android will be, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK before the end of this year. Thank
Okay.
you for the
That still doesn't
clarification.
answer the question about Scandinavia.
I
Because
don't. I
I
think the
am
answer
I
is
am not
no.
sure. Yeah, probably not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. All right. So that's the Maui experience. Now, if I can flip this for a second, let's look at the Maui with Blazor experience for a second. So I'm going to take you to Visual Studio, the IDE here, just to show you it's the same exact solution here. Let's look at this one here. So exactly the same solution, but if I started with the Blazor template, then you have a few things that are a little different. So for folks who don't want to write, XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever, want to be seeing. So this is combining some parts of Blazor, bringing it into a mobile app. So all we have here is a Blazor web view. This is a pretty smart abstraction. So what it does here, Robert, is it goes to iOS, goes to Android and Windows and
Mhm.
Macs and says, give me a browser. I'm just a modern app and I need a browser to render some web stuff, and off and running you go. So it's pointing into an index HTML. So now we are bringing in some web stuff, and I'm pointing to a component to my, bring up the first one. Those components live here in main.razor, which is essentially just, booting up the Blazor routing system, and then you have www.root, which has CSS and index HTML and favicons, so all types of web things. And there's a pages folder here, which actually has some of the Blazor UI components. So when you run this on a Mac or iOS or Android, you get the same Maui app, but it's done differently because now the UI is entirely Blazor. So something we mentioned is it doesn't need to be all Blazor. You can actually mix and match. So what you see here, this is a desktop app, but the same app will run on iOS or Android as well.
Mhm.
Everything in this app is Blazor. All of the UI is web UI, but it doesn't need to be, right? So you can absolutely mix and match. You can bring in some native Maui UI and then have the Blazor UI next to it if you want.
So you could write your Maui app in XAML and then bring in Blazor components that were written for a
Absolutely.
different app by a different person or by
Absolutely.
yourself. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's
So
cool.
I've seen apps where you have multiple tabs at the bottom as
Mhm.
a mobile app, and then some tabs have native UI that's written with .NET MAUI, C# and XAML, while some other tabs they just bring in a web view because you have a Blazor component that you want to
Okay,
use. So really a
cool.
lot of mix and match. The good thing here is if you are in this Blazor mode. If I bring up my Safari and my walled garden here, you can actually see that app running. I have my iPad that's connected, so it's seeing the iPad, but then that's my Mac, and there is my Maui Blazor Hello, right? So this is DevTools, right? Exactly as you hope in Chrome or Edge or Safari. So you are essentially, free to play around with CSS and HTML and JavaScript while your app is running inside of a simulator or inside of, a desktop shell. So, web developers kind of see this and they feel welcome because now they can, muck with the HTML and CSS while your app is running.
Right. So I think you covered this earlier, but you don't literally package the browser. You just use, and Maui and Blazor just uses the browser that's on the device, right?
Yes. So you don't need to package, unlike Electron. So this essentially is built right inside of. So this thing here, if I go back to main page, this is a UI component that is a part of the .NET Maui set of UI components everywhere. So you don't need to package anything else. The one difference, though, is if I look up the project file here, you'll notice that everything else is typical .NET Maui, but the project style actually brings in the SDK.razor. This is important because without this, the compiler is going to get a little freaked out because you're rendering web UI Razor components inside of a native app. But it is truly and absolutely a native app, and you can do all types of native things with Blazor.
So then what do you think about testing browser compatibility?
Well, you don't need to worry about it because you are on the browser on whichever device that it is on. Now, you still have to test your own app, but on Mac, you get what's called WK Web View. On iOS, you get the Safari WebKit. On Android, you get what's the thing called, the Chromium engine powered thing. So on whichever platform that you are, you just get the corresponding browser that the OS has to offer. The latest greenfield browser that the OS has, that's what the Maui runtime is requesting from the system.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I mean, thankfully, the browser war days of differences in rendering, those things are behind us. So for the most part, HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, they work the same everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now, speaking of what can you do, let's look at some more solutions here. So let's look at this one here. So when we bring in Blazor inside of mobile apps, which it wasn't meant to be, but now we are doing it comfortably, some questions should be obvious, like what can I do with Blazor on iOS or on Android? Can I do all types of native things that Maui does? And what type of Blazor components can I render? Are there limitations? So let's answer both the questions here. So this is a .NET Maui app with the Blazor template brought in. So let's go ahead and run this on, let's see. iPad Pro is fine. So let's go do that and run this. So it'll do a build and come back here with an iPad Pro. So yeah, Robert, sorry, you kind of see the speed of my Mac here.
So jealous.
I will say this, compared to Intel chips running Mac, although this build is taking a bit, between Intel chips and Apple Silicon, it's a huge jump. It really is.
Yeah. This is a problem that can be solved by the judicious use of cache.
Well, I mean, Apple kind of wants you to keep buying newer things every year. Yeah. Oh, Foolish Nebel is pulling our leg here. Teams works fine on M1, M2, even Intel Macs. It's just. Let's see, what is it doing? Why is it not coming up? Let's see if I can close out a few things here. VS Code I don't need. It's thinking, oh, no, it is.
There it is.
Okay, so you get the same Hello World experience that you just saw, but here I can, tap on that button and it says, hey, this is your app name. You happen to be running on portrait mode with this particular resolution, and your device happens to be an iPad Pro, and you happen to be on Wi-Fi, right? So kind of very native things, and we are not doing this in any, Swift or Objective-C or Java. This is all .NET, and it's just .NET APIs that Blazor can invoke anytime, right? So that makes it, really easy. So you can see, like, this is the view. And, earlier we used to have to bring in some namespaces like using Microsoft Maui or devices. You don't have to anymore. It's all baked in. So straight away, I can just say, give me the app info. Now, this is written in @code. So this is Blazor's quote unquote server side. there is no server. The server, you're literally on the device. So this is running on .NET on the device itself. And if you don't like, mixing and matching, visual code with business logic, then move it off to index.razor.cs. It's convention driven, then it'll be fine. It's just a partial class anyways.
Okay.
So app info, device display, that's how I read the orientation. Main display info height and width, so all of it is easy. I have full access to the connectivity device stack, so I can tell if you're on Wi-Fi or 3G 4G Wi-Fi, whatever it is that you need. So that's pretty easy. If I go here into the counter component, it's still a Blazor component, but I can do some extra things here. So let's go into the counter component. So first up is, what if you wanted to take a picture or load up something from the media library that the user has? So I can do that, just one line of code here. So let's go ahead and take a picture here. It's not actually taking a picture because it's a simulator, but it went in and said, here's your media library. This is just the default that you get with iOS. I'm going to pick a picture here, and it brings it back. This is coming deep from inside the iOS simulator, but this little image is actually an image tag. It's an HTML image tag is how we are showing this, just to kind of showcase the versatility. This is the image tag that's showing it, and that's the button click. So all we did was went and looked at the media picker, choose a photo, and then we have the full file path of the picture, and then we are just giving it that URL to our image tag. And just for the kicks, there is also a little bit of CSS here. That's an image CSS, just kind of centering the image. So right in here, so Blazor, your Sass, your CSS, your JavaScript, everything is welcome. And it all just works. You can also have, easy file system access. So if you need to read, write files or, quick key value pairs, you can do that as well. And let's look at something else here. So if I go in here to fetch data, which is the classic Blazor templated thing where it shows you some fake weather. So you have your weather forecasting coming up, but you see this on my screen here. It says, hey, are you okay allowing this app to use your location? Now, don't say that you're going to stalk the user, because then they will uninstall your app. But I can hit allow once. And what you get here is the device location. That's a lat long. Now, Blazor is not running in my browser. It is inside of a native app, so I can read geolocation. And it's just like one line of code. However, now this is where we say you are welcome to be a mobile developer, but now you're also, inheriting some of the pain of being a mobile developer, because every platform is a little different and you just need to know. So for iOS, for example, now I have to go into the platform specific things here. If I can show you iOS, and if I show you the info plist, this one here has a little setting that says, hey, this app reads your location. So these are permissions that you will have to enable.
So you set that need location access for stalking at the app level. You can change that little message at the app.
Yeah. This is just a flat text file.
Okay.
So this declares to the Apple, store that this app uses these things, like it uses camera, geolocation, whatnot.
Got it.
So anything native that you can do with .NET MAUI, you can do with Blazor, which is really nice. Now let's switch this up a little bit more and answer the other question. Is I have written a lot of Blazor apps for the web. Can I bring all of that to mobile? And the answer is yes. I'm going to choose something that's in my ballpark, but I'm just trying to show you an example that anything is welcome. So let's go ahead and run this really quick, and I'll show you what this does essentially. So this is still a .NET MAUI app with the Blazor template. So you can see Blazor UI. This is running on a Mac, but this is a classic, the Blazor template thing. But if I look at the index, all of this UI is actually Blazor UI, right? These are our Blazor UI components, like the QR code, the calendar, like the drop down here, any type of gauges and charts and graphs, everything that you do for web. If you have built custom components, these are Telerik components, but if you have built any components yourself, or if you bring in other third-party components, everything is welcome, because it's a modern web view. It will render everything that you want in it. Now, there can be a little bit of a help here. So if I, collapse this down almost to like a mobile, landscape, you can see this one is still not collapsed further yet, maybe like this. So now if I hit that calendar, now you see it's a little bit more touch friendly. So this is called like adaptive rendering, and you might have to do some of this on your own, or if you use smart UI, then it'll do that for you. But some of that responsiveness, that's still up to you, because you're bringing in Blazor, but then you have iPad screens or Android tablet screens that are wider, or you have phones that are smaller. So how your app responds to that, that's a little bit up to you. And Blazor will help you out, just with some bootstrap type rendering, but some of it might be up to you.
So Fuel Snable asked about performance. How are you finding Maui performance, Blazor with Maui performance, maybe compared to some of the alternatives, or just in general?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So they all do about the same thing. If you look at, let's just say, the React Native stack versus the Uno stack versus the .NET Maui stack, they all have similar things where you define your UI in something abstracted, C# or XAML or JSX, and you turn around and you render native UI. So there is a little bit of a price you do have to pay, but it depends where you want to keep the price. Some of the .NET folks, post .NET 8, they wrote up some performance numbers, which everyone should go read. It takes like a day to read some of like Stephen Tube's .NET performance blog posts, but there's a lot of fine-tuning going on here, and they're working hard on the AOT side of things, so everything can be pre-compiled, so it's faster. Once your app is up and running in release mode, you should not see any performance, degradations, because everything that the app needs, it's already there and it's running natively, on the Metal. So they're all about the same. Now, it depends a little bit on the developers. Like if we load up, 15 Blazor web views inside of a single app, single view, then those are 15 like Chrome processes that you're essentially going to spin up, right? So it's a little bit up to you to not, mess it up, but on paper, performance should be solid.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, so we answered a few questions here, and again, it's not difficult to bring in any dependencies with Blazor. Everything that you do with Blazor should be welcome. Now, let's see what else I can show you. This is all I do, Robert. I can keep going on and on. Let me show you this one here. Let's talk a little bit about the non.NET side of things, because it's kind of cool to look at what this enables. So Maui Angular Interop. So the name kind of gives it away a little bit. Let's go ahead and run this. I will show you what this does. So this is still the .NET Maui Blazor template. But if you look at the last 10 years of how we have built, modern web apps, there are lots of enterprises who do Angular, right? Or who do React. And if Blazor is now suddenly welcome, why wouldn't those folks be welcome to bring some of their investments over to mobile and desktop? So the answer is yes, because that web view doesn't actually care what you bring in. It's happy to render any type of web UI. So it's spinning still, and it's trying to deploy. But while it's doing, what I wanted to show you was what is being done here. So if I go up here, I have an Angular project. So if I zoom in a little bit here, Angular project, Angular CLI. So ng new is how I started. Then I get a standard Angular app with all of its dependencies. Then it's ready to work in my web browser. However, I can do a build and I can make it ready. So I have a distribution folder here. And at this point, this app, everything that this app needs to run is actually in this folder itself. Like everything has been flattened out. All of my JavaScript, all of my polyfills, my runtimes, my styles, everything is right here. However, I can bring all of that inside of Maui, right? And there's nothing stopping me. So if I look at the code here, this is where we have the pages directories, not there, but here. These are all the Blazor, UI components, but I'm actually not using them, because if you look at my main page.xaml, this is still using a Blazor web view, but I'm not rendering Blazor. I'm actually not utilizing this, second line of code, because I have already given it this index HTML, which kind of circumvents the whole process. This is the index HTML that Blazor likes to use, which has, the Blazor div tag and some of the Blazor dependencies. This is the index HTML that I am using, which actually has some of my Angular things built in. So my polyfills, my things. So, and I dropped all of my Angular built things right in here inside of my Maui project. So that makes it easier. So now if I go back to my simulator, my Angular app is running. So for those of you who do Angular, work, this is going to feel like Hello World Angular, which is exactly what it is. However, the TypeScript that you have in your Angular app can actually talk to .NET fairly easily. So take a look at this. I can do, within a simulator, I can do a check number, whether it's even or odd. I can say, this prompt looks a little weird because it's not actually running on localhost. So it'll tell you 4 is even, but even better, if I can zoom in here a little bit, get device info. If I tap on that, now, whoops, it's jumping around. Now, my Angular app is saying, hey, I am running on an iPad Pro, by the way, which is running whatever version of iOS, and your orientation happens to be portrait, right? So these are, again, very native iOS APIs that you have access to from .NET MAUI. Right. So here's the trick. So from my Angular app, this is done in JavaScript, but you can also do this in TypeScript if you want. Here are the two methods I invoked: check number and get device info. And those two are actually .NET methods. So here's JavaScript talking to .NET and back and forth. Wow. Those methods happen to be defined here in my .NET project in appxaml.cs, which is where my app is kind of starting up. There is a nice little declaration here that says JS invocable. So Blazor, when Blazor comes over and works on MAUI, it actually brings along a very nice thing called the JS interrupt. And that is, this little namespace here. So if you had JavaScript that you are using in Blazor, and the whole point of Blazor is to not use JavaScript, but if you did have JavaScript, you could actually make it work. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We are decorating these two functions here with the JS invocable, which makes it available to JavaScript to call. So when you call get device info, it's actually tapping into device info, device display, the same exact APIs that Blazor was reading. Now we are reading them from Angular. So
that is cool.
Yeah, so .NET and JavaScript can absolutely talk to each other. And there are some smart folks who are working on this a little bit more. Let me show you that. This is Elon Lipton from the .NET team. He's a long-term engineer, very smart person, and he is working on this. This is still experimental, by the way, but you can go play with this right now. This is a thing called the hybrid web view experiment. This is still .NET MAUI, but what you'll notice here in my main page, this is not a Blazor hybrid web view. This is our Blazor web view is just called the hybrid web view. This one kind of wraps up that interaction between .NET and JavaScript just a little better. So if I go ahead and run this now, where is it? Run that. So still .NET MAUI app, but you will see the front end kind of changes here, because I think what Elon did here was he took a React app, which is a React to-do application. So in this view that you see, and it'll work the same way on iOS or iPad, that to-do items, that text, that is a native .NET MAUI component. But all of this UI, that's a React UI. So like eat, sleep, and code, I can add it here, I can check it here, I can delete. So all of those things work, but and this is kind of maybe a very classic use case for a lot of .NET enterprises who have done React or Angular, but their data is still .NET, and that's kind of what this is mimicking here. So if you look at the to-do task, that is a CS. That is a task that is maintained in my C#. And here's the to-do data source. So when we are adding or removing things, we are doing things here in my .NET code. Just the front end happens to be React, right? And all of that is now welcome because .NET MAUI doesn't care what web UI you want to bring in.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
What's the chat room asking?
One last question about interop. Can you do that with
any? Yeah, absolutely. Svelte, Vue, anything. It doesn't care, honestly. So you can start sharing a lot more code between web and native apps.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Those are all the questions. Probably wrap up at this point.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Like I said, I'm old. This is the world I live in. I enjoy the fact that modern .NET can be so flexible, so we can share our code so much better. So let me go back to where we had started. Seeing is believing. Hopefully you see some of my failures, but hopefully you see the promise of where modern .NET can take you. It's
Yep.
to build cross-platform native apps for iOS or Android, but the same code base can also work with or light up desktop apps. So you have all the ammunition to go build amazing mobile apps. Choose your stack, choose wisely. Look at what expertise you have in your team. Do you want to do .NET? Then absolutely, then you are with me and Robert. But if you want to do JavaScript, that's fine too. VS Code and all of the ecosystem is right there, and you can bring those same assets over to mobile and light things up a little bit easier. So go build amazing apps, and thanks for hanging out with us. That's me again. So this has been an hour, and yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on. That was very cool stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. And we will see you next time on Visual Studio Toolbox.
All right.